Every chess game is decided before most players even realize it has started. Not at move 10, not at move 20. Right at the beginning, in the first 3, 4, 5 moves, the game is already tilting in someone's favor, and most players have no idea why. The opening you choose tells your opponent everything about you. It tells them whether you understand the board or whether you are guessing. It tells them whether you are about to give them a free game or make their next hour very uncomfortable. Today, you are going to learn the 5 best chess openings that serious players use to win consistently, and the 5 worst openings that hand your opponent the advantage before the game even gets interesting. By the end of this video, you will never walk into the opening phase of a chess game blind again. Let us start with the best. Best opening number 1. The Italian game. The Italian game is one of the oldest chess openings in recorded history, dating back to the 16th century, and it is still played at the highest levels of the game today. That alone should tell you something. It begins with white playing e4, black responding with e5, white developing the knight to f3, black mirroring with their own knight to c6, and then white places the bishop on c4, pointing it directly at black's most vulnerable square, f7, which is protected only by the king. The Italian game is the perfect opening for beginners and intermediate players because it teaches you the 3 most important principles of chess openings all at once. Control the center, develop your pieces, get your king to safety. From the Italian position, white has multiple paths forward. You can play the gioco piano, a slow positional game where you build a solid center and outmaneuver your opponent piece by piece. You can play the Evans Gambit, sacrificing a pawn early to rip open lines and launch a fierce attack. Or you can enter the 2 knights defense, one of the sharpest and most tactical variations in all of chess. The Italian game works because it is flexible. It does not commit you to one rigid plan. It gives you options. And at every level of chess, from beginners to grandmasters, options win games. Best opening number 2. The Sicilian Defence. If you want to play for a win as black, not just a draw, not just equality, but a real fighting chance to outplay your opponent, the Sicilian Defence is the most statistically successful response to e4 in the history of competitive chess. Black's first move is c5. Just one pawn, not mirroring white's center pawn, but challenging it from the side. This single move creates an asymmetrical position immediately. White's center is challenged. The pawn structures on both sides of the board become unbalanced, and unbalanced positions mean both sides are playing for the win. The Sicilian has been used by nearly every world chess champion in history. Bobby Fischer called it the best response to e4, even while famously preferring to play e5 himself. Garry Kasparov built his entire career on it. Magnus Carlsen has used it at critical moments in world championship matches. There are dozens of variations inside the Sicilian, the Najdorf, the Dragon, the Scheveningen, the Classical, each with its own character and theory. But the core idea is always the same. Black accepts a slightly cramped position early in exchange for a dynamic counter-attacking game where one mistake by white can be punished immediately and decisively. The Sicilian defense works because chess is not just about building a position, it is about creating problems for your opponent. And the Sicilian creates problems from move 1. Best opening number 3. The French defense. The French defense is for players who like a plan. Not improvisation, not chaos. A clear, logical, structural plan that plays out over the entire game. Black's response to e4 is e6. One move and black is already saying something important. Already Zaks, I'm going to let you build your center and then I am going to undermine it. White typically plays d4 next, building a strong pawn center. Black then plays d5, immediately challenging it. White advances with e5, and suddenly the board has a locked pawn structure in the center with both sides launching attacks on opposite wings. White typically attacks on the king side. Black counterattacks on the queen side. The result is one of the most strategically rich and fascinating middle game structures in all of chess. The French defense was a favorite of former world champion Mikhail Botvinnik and has been used effectively by top grandmasters for over 2 centuries. Its weakness, and every opening has one, is that black's light-squared bishop on c8 often gets trapped behind its own pawns and becomes passive for much of the game. Learning the French means learning how to solve that problem, and when you do, you will have a weapon that works at every level. Best opening number 4. The Ruy Lopez. If the Italian game is a classic, the Ruy Lopez is an institution. Named after the 16th century Spanish priest Ruy Lopez de Segura, who analyzed it in one of the earliest chess books ever written, this opening has been played in world championship matches across every era of modern chess. After e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, white plays bishop to b5. The idea is subtle and powerful. White is not immediately attacking the knight. White is threatening to eventually capture it, eliminate black's main defender of the e5 pawn, and win that central pawn. Black has to respond carefully or face immediate structural problems. The Ruy Lopez leads to incredibly rich and complex positions. There are entire books, multiple volumes, written about single variations within it. The Martial Attack, the Berlin Defense, the Breyer Variation, the Chigarin. Each is a world unto itself. What makes the Ruy Lopez one of the best openings in chess is that it puts pressure on black from the very first move without overextending white's position. It is aggressive but sound. It is ambitious but controlled. Grandmasters like Kasparov, Fischer, Karpov, and Carlsen have all relied on it as a primary weapon throughout their careers. If you want to understand chess at a deep level, learn the Ruy Lopez. It will teach you more about the game than almost anything else. Best opening number 5. The Slav Defence. The Slav Defence is the most solid and reliable response to the Queen's Gambit, White's d4, d5, c4 opening, and it has been a cornerstone of top-level chess for over 100 years. Black's response is c6, supporting the d5 pawn without blocking the light-squared bishop. That last part is crucial. One of the biggest problems with accepting the Queen's Gambit as black is that after taking the c4 pawn, you often struggle to develop your pieces smoothly. The Slav avoids all of that. Black keeps the center solid, keeps the pieces active, and maintains a flexible position that can go in many directions. The Slav was a favorite of world champions Ruy, Botvinnik, Smyslov, and more recently has been used extensively by top players including Anand and Gelfand in world championship matches. It is the opening of players who respect their opponent's position but refuse to be pushed around. The Slav works because it is honest chess. No tricks, no gambits, no speculative sacrifices. Just solid development, strong pawn structure, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your position is safe. Now let us talk about the other side. The openings that do not work. The moves that give your opponent exactly what they want before you even understand what is happening. Worst opening number 1. The Fool's Mate setup. The Fool's Mate is the fastest checkmate possible in chess. 2 moves for black, and the game is over. It happens when white plays f3 or f4 on move 1 or 2, followed by g4. These 2 moves accomplish nothing in terms of development or center control, and they do something far worse. They open a fatal diagonal directly toward white's king. Black simply plays a6 followed by queen to h4, and it is checkmate. The game is finished before white has moved a single piece into active play. Now, very few players fall for the exact Fool's Mate pattern past the beginner stage. But the reason this setup makes the list of worst openings is what it represents. Any opening that weakens your king's position in the early moves, ignores center control, and develops no pieces is following the same logic as the Fool's Mate setup. You are handing your opponent a roadmap to your king and asking them politely to use it. The lesson is not just about this specific 2-move sequence, it is about the principle. Moving pawns in front of your king early, especially the f and g pawns, without a very specific tactical reason, is one of the fastest ways to lose a chess game at any level. Worst opening number 2, the Amar opening. The Amar opening begins with white moving the knight to h3, the very edge of the board, and that is already a significant problem. One of the most fundamental principles in chess is that knights are weakest on the rim. A knight on h3 controls only 2 squares on the board. A knight in the center controls up to 8. You have used your very first move, your most valuable tempo in the entire game, to place a piece in one of its worst possible positions. The Amar opening has no serious theory behind it, no plan for development, and no mechanism for controlling the center. It gives black complete freedom to build whatever position they want, and a good player, given complete freedom in the opening, will build an overwhelming position very quickly. There is no level of chess at which the Amar opening is recommended. It is not a surprise weapon. It is not a psychological trick. It is simply a poor use of your first move. Worst opening number 3, the Clemenz opening. The Clemenz opening starts with h3, a pawn move to the edge of the board that does absolutely nothing for your position. It does not control the center, it does not develop a piece, it does not prepare to castle, it simply moves a pawn 1 square to create a small gap on the side of the board. Against any competent opponent, playing h3 on move 1 means you have handed black a free tempo. Black develops normally, pieces out, center controlled, king safety prepared, and white is already 1 full move behind in what is essentially a race. The Clemenz opening is not aggressive. It is not tricky. It is not setting a trap. It is just a wasted move. And in chess, where tempo is one of the most precious resources in the game, wasting your very first one is an almost unrecoverable mistake against a strong opponent. Worst opening number 4. The Grob attack. The Grob attack begins with g4. White immediately pushes a kingside flank pawn 2 squares forward on the very first move of the game. The problems with this are immediate and serious. g4 does not control the center. It does not develop a piece, and it weakens white's kingside. Exactly where white's king will likely want to castle for safety. You are creating a weakness in front of your own king before the game has even properly started. The Grob attack does have a small cult following among players who use it as a surprise weapon at the amateur level, because many beginners do not know how to punish it and can walk into early traps. But against any player who knows basic chess principles, black simply develops normally, controls the center, and uses the weaknesses that g4 has created to launch a decisive attack. At club level and above, the Grob attack loses consistently against prepared opponents. It relies entirely on your opponent not knowing what to do, which is not a strategy. It is a gamble. Worst opening number 5. The Barnes opening. The Barnes opening plays f3 on white's very first move. This is arguably the worst first move available to white in chess, and the reasons stack up immediately. f3 does not develop a piece. It does not control the center with a piece. It blocks the natural development square for white's kingside knight, one of the most important pieces in the early game. And most critically, it weakens the e1 to h4 diagonal leading directly to white's king, which has not moved and cannot yet castle. The Barnes opening essentially combines the worst elements of every bad opening principle into a single move. You block your own piece, weaken your own king, and give black complete freedom to develop however they choose. Thomas Wilson Barnes, the 19th century English player for whom this opening is named, used it as a surprise weapon specifically against Paul Morphy, one of the greatest attacking players in chess history. Barnes reportedly scored several draws against Morphy using it, which tells you more about Morphy's willingness to outplay any position than it does about the quality of the opening itself. Against modern players with modern preparation, the Barnes opening is simply a free advantage handed directly to black. There is no good reason to play it. Here is what all 5 of the worst openings have in common. They ignore the center. They delay or block piece development. They weaken the king's position. And they give the opponent exactly the kind of free, comfortable game that good players use to build overwhelming advantages. And here is what all 5 of the best openings share. They fight for the center from the very first move. They bring pieces into active positions quickly. They think about king safety. And they give the player who uses them a plan, a direction, a set of ideas to follow even when the game becomes complicated. Chess is a game of decisions. Every move is a decision, and the opening is where the foundation of every decision that follows gets built. Play the best openings and you start every game on solid ground. Play the worst ones and you spend the rest of the game trying to dig yourself out of a hole that did not need to exist. Now you know the difference. The next game you play, that knowledge goes with you.